Which Side Podcast is a proud member of the Which Side Media Collective.
This week's episode is brought to us by Kittens. Recently, news broke of a Spanish woman who was fined €100 for carrying a handbag saying that all cats are beautiful, because police thought the initials ACAB meant all cops are bastards. So to help remind police that it's okay to love cats, we're offering 50% off all our ACAB shirts, patches, and bandanas in the Which Side Media Collective store. Just use promo code ACAB at checkout. That's whichsidecollective.org.
Promo code ACAB. I saw one of the shirts in the wild today.
Oh, really?
Yeah, at a flea market.
Nice.
Kind of made me smile. This is episode 188.
Yeah, we talk with Hannah Shaw, the kitten lady.
I love this conversation. I know I say that a lot, but I just love the people we talk to. I actually learned a lot about why there's the issue behind kittens, why we need to care about it more as animal rights activists, and just as people in general, right? I love this conversation. So stick around for that. Hey, Jordan, what news and events do we have going on?
Well, if you're going to be in Salt Lake City, you can go to the downtown library on Tuesday for Salt Lake City's Anarchist Black Cross Prisoner Letter Writing Night. We'll be focusing on the International Day of Solidarity for all long-term eco and anarchist prisoners. So come out, write some letters. And if you're not in Salt Lake City, write some letters anyway. This week's listener shout-out comes from Charlotte Malrich. Charlotte said that we could shout out whatever we wanted to do. And in light of recent tragedy that happened in Orlando, we just want people to reach out to their local LGBTQIA plus communities and see what you can do to help.
Yeah, the best thing you can do in situations like this is ask, don't assume. So reach out, figure out how you can help your community, and step up. Go do that. For the slingshot this week, June 18th, 1990. Redwood summer begins with the IWW blockade of lumber exports in Sonoma, California. I always love hearing about more modern day wobbly stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know the wobblies are still active. You might have an active chapter in your neck of the woods. Go check it out. Wobblies are just fucking awesome. Mm-hmm. And we owe a lot of our current labor rights to the wobblies. So, go support them. Go support the wobblies. Go support all workers. Just support people. Come on.
Wobblies even have prison chapters.
Do they? I didn't know that.
Inside the prisons, yeah.
It's awesome.
Incarcerated workers of the world.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
If you like these little tidbits of history, we pulled them out of the Slingshot Personal Organizer. You can get yourself one at a local info shop. Or if you don't have a local info shop, you can start one. Or you can get one at an online info shop like AK Press. And remember, they don't pay us for this. We just really like what they do.
Yeah.
So support them. I sincerely hope you enjoy this episode.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side? Which side are you on? 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 Which side are you on?
So how's your day going?
Oh, it's always busy, but it's good. Busy and good.
Busy in like your activism work, or just busy in as life is busy in general?
Isn't it both always? All I do is activism work. Yeah, it's busy. I'm preparing for a trip, so a lot of prep work today, and I actually just dropped my kittens off with somebody so that I can leave for 12 days. So I'm kitten free right now, but a lot of my morning was preparing the kittens and making sure this person who's watching them has everything she needs. So just a lot of prep work today.
Is it stressful going kitten free?
No, it's nice. It's nice. I mean, the cool thing about being on social media and like having so much of what I do be so visible is that I get to watch all of the kittens that I raise grow up. And when I'm babysitting kittens, or when someone's babysitting kittens for me, usually they're like all over social media. So I can still see what's going on with them. I'm in constant touch with them, but it's nice, a little bit of a break, not like constant care for kittens. I'm going down to Florida, and I'm actually going to be doing a ton of kitten work there, but it's just, I won't be, raising kittens while I'm down there. I'm going to be doing a bunch of advocacy work.
So what made your love for kittens? Like what brought you to focusing solely on kittens?
Yeah, it's so interesting because I have been in the animal world for a very long time. Like I stopped eating animals when I was 12. And I went vegan when I was 15, and I was like a hardcore activist, like doing all sorts of anti-circus advocacy and anti-vivisection work and lots of different animal advocacy work. And I was not a cat person at all. I loved all animals, of course, like I respected all animals, but it wasn't until I was about 20 and I was living in Philly and I encountered my first orphaned kitten. And of course, like anybody who cares about animals, I felt compelled to do something. I was like, okay, there's this orphan. I don't know what to do, but I know I want to help. So I took her in and I discovered that there is very, very little in the way of resources or education about what to do with orphaned kittens. So fortunately, I was able to raise that kitten, and that kitten is now my cat Coco, who I'm looking at asleep on my couch. And she kind of inspired like the next 8 years of my life. I think that it was just, I always put my activism wherever I think there's the highest need and wherever I think I can be the most effective. And I kind of discovered this weird area of just need where there's this huge gap in resources and knowledge about orphaned kittens. And I sort of just became obsessed with trying to help any kittens that I found outside. I mean, once you discover how there are kittens all over the place outside, it really like your eyes adjust and all of a sudden you see them everywhere. So I started, just finding kittens outside, and I became associated with kittens. People would call me when they found kittens outside, and, one thing led to the next, and now I'm the kitten lady. So.
Do you think that there's the gap because a lot of animal rights activists view focusing on domesticated animals more of a welfare issue?
Yeah, it's interesting to kind of I sort of straddle all sorts of different worlds with animal stuff. So I'm like, I'm a vegan activist. I'm also an animal sheltering and animal welfare nonprofit worker. I'm also an internet cat person now. So there's like all these various worlds that overlap. And I always try to like bring them all together and explain really like where I'm standing, which is kind of at the center of all of that. I don't know. I think that a lot of people just don't know what's happening to kittens and cats. A lot of people, of course, like if you're vegan and you're up against huge institutionalized cruelty against farm animals and against, primates and even like rats in laboratories, like, you're doing all of this work that feels, you feel like you're the only one in the world who cares about it. And then you see cats. Well, everybody loves cats, so they must be fine, mm-hmm. Especially kittens. People think, oh my God, kittens basically own the internet. Like everyone loves kittens, so they must be fine, right? But they're not. That's the thing, is that they're absolutely not. Kittens and cats have tremendous, tremendous numbers of mortality in the United States that's totally unnecessary in the shelter system. And a lot of it has to do with lack of education of like even people who feel like they care about cats, who just don't know a lot of the issues around, population management and feral cats and orphaned kittens, and just don't realize like what's happening in our shelter system. So I don't know. I think it's cool. I think it's kind of cool that I have found myself as, kind of the like radical activist that I was, like developing into somebody that can take some of those philosophies and bring them into animal sheltering, but also take some of the like animal sheltering knowledge and bring it to like more radical communities and say like, hey, this is totally an issue that we should care about,
In the sheltering world, do you find yourself like being ostracized a little bit for being a little more radical?
I don't think so, because I say this with all respect to cat people, but I think that a lot of people who get involved in animal sheltering and in like cat advocacy and rescue world, they get into it because they don't really like people, they get into it because they're like, well, I hate people, so I'll work with animals. But the thing is, in order to accomplish any goal, you have to be able to work with people. So I think, I think that because I'm motivated by really wanting to see the most results possible, like I am a very social person, and I'm very conscious of like that many people have to be at the table in order for things to be accomplished. So when I come into an animal shelter, it's so weird because like, years and years ago, I never would have thought I would be like shaking hands with like the sheriff of a small community trying to, work side by side with him. But actually, like, so much of what has to happen in communities to accomplish change for cats is for there to be change like at the municipal level. And most shelters are run by, they're run by the local government. So I come in and I have like my viewpoint, which I think is very unique. But I think that people respect where I'm coming from because not a lot of people have spent their career and their lives traveling all over the United States, wrapping their head around what's going on with cats and kittens in this country. And I have, so I come from a unique perspective with a very, I just have a lot of experience seeing this stuff work and seeing what doesn't work. So, I think I'm able to work with lots of different people and get my point across. I also look at a lot of advocacy as like acting, like I come from a family of entertainers. So, if I believe fully in like playing to your audience, if you're like working with somebody who's not going to, like your tattoos or your radical tactics, like I'm happy to put on a blazer and button my top button and like go in there and save lives if that's what has to happen. So, again, just straddling lots of different worlds at once, trying to do as big and as wide of change as I possibly can.
So what are some of the problems that kittens and cats face that you don't think most people are aware of?
Well, I think that, for instance, like at the Animal Rights National Conference last year, I spoke, and I'm speaking again this year. And so in animal rights, I think that people believe that the biggest issue impacting cats is animal cruelty. So like people abusing cats or something like that, or even abandonment of pet cats. Mm-hmm. And that is absolutely a thing, that is a real thing, but that is not at all the biggest issue. Like when I'm asked to speak, when they asked me to speak, they said, will you speak about cruelty to cats? And I said, well, I'll speak about institutionalized cruelty and like the culture in the United States around sheltering, because that's actually the biggest issue impacting cats. And what people don't know is that the most at-risk populations in animal shelters are community cats, so like outdoor unowned cats, and kittens under 8 weeks old. So people don't know that. Like people, I think even people who care a lot about animals, they picture, oh, it's so sad. Like if they think an animal shelter is a sad place, they think like people abandon their pets there and then they might be euthanized and it's so sad. But really what's actually a bigger issue is that in this country, we do not value spaying and neutering cats that we don't own, quote unquote. So there's like a lot of like legal issues and programmatic issues around people not spaying and neutering outdoor populations. And that's where all these animals are coming from. That's where the majority of cats and kittens that are dying in shelters come from, is actually outside cats that are not sterilized. So that's like a big point that I try to drive home, is that like, you know, when I got involved in this work, I I cared about this little kitten, and then I cared about a few more little kittens. And then eventually I realized, hey, wait, all these kittens are orphaned outside and they're all born to feral cats. So like we have to do something about this. We have to do something preventative while saving individuals who are already born. We have to be preventing, this from just being an endless cycle. So I think people don't really make that connection. Sometimes people have a lot of misconceptions about like where kittens are coming from and what's happening to them. So I try to, so much of my stuff is on social media, very visible. And I try to make it like really, really fun and really something that people will engage with, but also something that like teaches people this stuff that they might not know.
So you mentioned working with local municipalities. Is there any place that you know of that you would say is doing it right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Someone was just asking me earlier today, do I think that we'll have a no-kill nation in my lifetime? And I had to think about it. And then I said, you know what, I do. I really do. I really do think that we can get there because it's happening already, like all over the place. There's, I just taught a workshop at Fairfax County Animal Shelter in Northern Virginia a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And afterwards, I was doing a tour of the shelter and talking with them. And, obviously, they're pretty progressive to bring in somebody to train, a ton of people about how to raise orphans, because a lot of shelters don't do that. So they're a pretty good shelter for like a open admission municipal shelter. And they were talking to me about how, one of the best things they've done that has helped them achieve such a great live release rate is that they started involving themselves in trap, neuter, return of feral cats. And they said that after 3 years after they first started spaying and neutering outdoor cats, their kitten intake dropped by over 40%, which is like unbelievable. So all these orphan kittens that like would have been coming into the shelter are not coming into the shelter because of the programs that they've developed. And then, what's really cool is that the kittens that are coming into the shelter, they're training people how to save, so they don't kill kittens there. So there's solutions to all of this stuff. And it's partly why it drives me crazy when people, there are big animal organizations that are very against no-kill sheltering. I'm sure who some of those organizations are, but they'll call things like, it's slow kill. And it's so misinformed because, all that no-kill sheltering means is that a program exists in order to save those animals' lives. So just like, I always say, if you go into an animal shelter, like the number one program that a shelter operates is an adoption program, right? Like if you think about like what does a shelter have in terms of programs? They have an adoption program, so you can go in and adopt a cat, and that's because a program exists in order for you to do that. Well, if there's populations of animals that don't have a program for them, for instance, like unsocialized cats or kittens under 8 weeks old, if there's no program for them, then totally there's nothing you can do for them except kill them. But if you put in place a program, you can save them. And it's pretty simple. So yeah, there's a lot of shelters that have great programs. And that's all that no-kill means, is that people are prioritizing, figuring out what programs work for each population that might come into the shelter. I'm going to Miami this week, and they have wonderful programs for kittens there. They have some really cool diversion programs, meaning like diverting the kittens that would have come into the shelter. They will actually turn people into fosters kind of across the counter when people bring in kittens, rather than saying, oh yeah, sure, we'll take the kittens for you. Because a lot of people just dump animals on shelters. Rather than saying like, sure, we'll take those kittens for you. They say, hey, if you leave these kittens here, they're very likely to be euthanized. But we will teach you how to help them, and we'll give you some supplies. And all you have to do is take them home and save their life, and then bring them back once they're old enough to be adopted, and we'll adopt them out. And so many people will participate in that, because once people know, they're way less likely to say like, just kill the kitten. I don't care. Nobody wants to kill kittens. The reason that people dump them at shelters and they die there is because they don't know. They think they did a good thing. So yeah, I think that's my long-winded way of saying there are a lot of shelters that are starting to pick up on things like, we got to have an orphan kitten program, and we have to have a diversion program. We have to be educating people about what really happens when animals come in here, so that it puts some more accountability on the community to step up and save them. So yeah, there's a lot of shelters that are doing it right. And I've seen, I travel all over the country doing this. I've seen, big city shelters doing it right. I've even seen tiny little shelters doing it right, in rural areas where it's like very heartening to see really, really progressive work being done. So, I have hope. If I didn't have hope, I probably wouldn't be so driven about it. But, change is happening. It's a slow moving wheel, but it's turning.
So would you say that generally animal control officers care about the well-being? It's just that there's no programs and they're not properly trained, or there's not enough resources?
Oh, God, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it varies. It depends on the person. I think, in my experience from working with a lot of different, shelter directors and administrators and animal control officers, in my experience, there are very few people who go to work wanting to kill animals. Even if they have gotten themselves to a place where they believe that it's the right thing to do, very few people start out being like, what I want to do with my career? Like, kill a bunch of animals. And when you go in and you teach them another way, and you say like, hey, like, have you tried it this way? Here's how another shelter did it that's very similar budget and size to you. Why don't we try it out? When you give someone an alternative, people are so happy to have something else that they can be doing. I think that a lot of it is ignorance, and a lot of it is money, and a lot of it is just, the culture. People don't even consider that you could save kittens under 8 weeks old. I always talk about like the definition of euthanasia, right? So the definition of euthanasia is, putting to rest an animal that is hopelessly suffering. And I think that there's a big issue with how we look at the idea of hope and hopelessness when we're making decisions about euthanasia, because certainly, like, I think that there are very, very ethical ways of euthanizing an animal that is truly hopelessly suffering in bad condition where there is no chance of survival for them. But like a kitten, like a 5-week-old kitten, is not hopeless. I've saved hundreds of them, So my whole message around that is just that, like, let's change our framework around like hope and hopelessness here, because if they can be saved, then they should be saved, and then it's not euthanasia if you're not saving them; it's just killing.
So you brought up like the large animal rights organizations and some of their stances, and I want to get into that as well. But one of the things that I've come across is having discussions with just animal rights activists. There's not really a consensus on whether or not spade and neutering should be acceptable from an animal rights perspective, right? Because
oh my gosh.
And so I'm wondering, like, have you like really like encountered that? Because I know I've encountered that quite a bit.
You know what? I can say, like, coming from a background where I work with and know a lot of people who are very, like, I guess it's all about like bodily autonomy, kind of, right? That,
yeah.
Like who gave you the right to tell that animal if they can or cannot reproduce? I get that from a very immature standpoint. Like, I get that somebody could feel that way. But that to me is probably spoken from the perspective of someone who has never stood in the center of it. The fact is, like, whether you like it or not, and whether it jives with your like philosophies about bodily autonomy, like, the fact is 7 out of 10 cats that enter shelters in the United States are killed there. There are too many, like, for any shelter to handle. And the reason there's so many is because they're outside populating, they're in people's houses populating, and people, you can think, it's like it's the miracle of life. I want my cat to be able to choose to have babies or something like that. But, like, okay, are you going to then keep all 6 of those babies, or are you going to bring them to a shelter? Because if you bring them to a shelter, they're going to die there. Like, that's just how it is. So, it's maybe not a perfect thing that like we have to spend so much time and energy. And people do say like, oh, I feel so bad, like trapping cats, and it scares them. And then you have to put them through surgery. Like, certainly it's not like a fun, happy-go-lucky thing, but the alternative is that they are literally murdered. So I think that we can handle spaying and neutering animals. Like, from an animal rights perspective, I have zero issue with that. In fact, I think it's almost laughable to not have an issue with like allowing cats to just kind of propagate, because that's how we end up where we are.
I kind of feel like how I feel when people like the quote unquote abolitionist movement, where like I understand where they're coming from and I can understand the mindset behind it, but it doesn't jive with reality. Right.
Yeah. So that's I get that with a lot of things, and I feel like I'm changing a lot the older I get, because I remember being like, God, I remember being like 18 years old and going to the AR conference, and I remember this like talk about like abolitionism versus welfare, and I was like, screw welfarists, like I'm an abolitionist. But then I'm like, what I actually do when I'm like that is I sit there and I, clench my jaw and I squeeze my fists, and I'm very hard to engage with, and I don't actually change anything. I think that it's important to have that be like the fire in your gut, like that is the fire in my gut, 100%. Like, I don't go into a place being like, I wish that they'd kill fewer cats. I go in a place being like, I wish no cats would die. Absolutely. That's the motivation. But I think that can be like a guiding philosophy that then is used in a very pragmatic way to achieve like actual milestones. I don't know. That's kind of where I'm coming from with it. And I see it working. So I'm motivated by actual, evidence of change. So that's kind of where I'm coming from with that.
Another thing I want to talk about is the whole idea of vegan cats and feeding non-vegan food to cats as like a vegan person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I give so many talks at different types of events, and the only place I've ever been asked about this was at, again, the AR conference, and somebody stood up and said, well, cats should be vegan. And I'll tell you a story. So I used to do a lot of work with this tiger sanctuary in North Carolina, and they're taking in tigers that were privately owned as pets and, declawed to the point that they are like mutilated and can't really walk and are arthritic. They take in, circus tigers that are terrified of people from being beaten for their whole lives. They take in all these exploited tigers, and tigers, maybe you don't know this if you didn't have zoo books as a child or whatever, but like they are obligate carnivores. They have to eat meat. That's where they come from, So we would get in, chickens that were the chickens that like were killed, that died before they could make it to slaughter. We would get them from like the poultry processing plant, quote unquote. And we would also get roadkill deer. And when I first started doing work there, I was like so troubled by this, like just for the first week, where I was like, oh my God, can I butcher a deer as a vegan? Like, this is so messed up. But then I did the math in my head and I realized like, okay, so why are the tigers here? The tigers are here because humans did horrific things to them. And now these few are lucky enough to be in a sanctuary. Why are the deer dead? The deer are dead because humans did horrific things to them by putting roads through their habitats and then running them over, So the deer are dead because of humans. The tigers are in captivity because of humans. And here I am, I'm a vegan activist in the middle of it. And honestly, the best thing I think I can do is make the most out of that situation as possible. And I can feed the deer to the tiger. And so like that, I think, solidified my feelings about that, which is that like we have caused so many issues for animals just through our like need to incessantly control every animal, wildlife, domesticated animals. But we shouldn't be putting animals at risk, like by feeding iceberg lettuce to a tiger or something, just because like my consumer politics don't line up with your actual biology as an animal, So no, that's a long-winded way of saying like absolutely cats should not be vegan. There is no way to do that is respectful of the cat's biology. They are carnivores, and they have, God, I mean, especially kittens. I'll tell you, like, I actually have had, so like my biggest thing is my Instagram profile. I have like, I don't know how many, over 130,000 people on there. So every day I get probably between 50 and 75 direct messages, which I can't answer because obviously that's a lot of direct messages. But I scroll through sometimes and I see the most heartbreaking stuff of people being like, I got this kitten and I'm vegan and I tried to give her almond milk and now she's dead. Oh
God,
that is garbage. Like, don't put your consumer politics on that little orphan kitten. That kitten needs formula, and that formula contains like whey proteins, and you're going to have to deal with that if you want to save that kitten's life, because almond milk is not going to, you're just slowly killing that or quickly killing that animal. So it's complicated though. I definitely think it's really complicated stuff, and there's a lot of really complex and heady issues around like any kind of complex advocacy for animals. But I think like the bottom line is, we have to do what is right for their bodies. If they are entrusted to us, if their literal bodies are in our hands and we are the ones who are tasked with saving them, you have to give them what their body needs. So yeah, no to vegan cats.
If you don't mind, I kind of want to switch gears for a second. You said that you went vegetarian at 12 and then vegan at 15.
Mm-hmm.
What were those like milestones? Like what caused you to have those moments of change?
Yeah. So I grew up in Manhattan, and I was never around farm animals. I'd never seen farm animals. When I was 12, I went on this like tour with my dad, and we were doing all of these like state fairs all over the country. I had a weird childhood, but anyway, we were doing all these state fairs, and I had never been around agricultural work before. So when I was 12, I was in, I don't even know, maybe like Indiana or something, somewhere. I had never been to like the middle of America in my life. And there were, at state fairs, they have like the 4-H club there, mm-hmm. and they have all their farm animals. And so I was so excited because I loved animals, but I only ever saw like pigeons and squirrels. So I was like, this is the best. And I went over, I saw this pig, and she had these piglets she had given birth to. And I was like, oh, God, this is the best day of my life. And then she stepped backwards in this tiny pen she was in, and she crushed one of them. Oh, and I saw this piglet struggling and squealing, and I was crying. I was just a little kid. And I remember going up to an adult and saying, please, 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 please help this piglet. And the person looked at me and said something like, well, you eat bacon, don't you? And it just was like a switch that went off in my head. And I was like, oh my God, I do eat bacon. And from that moment on, I didn't, that was it. I remember getting so upset about it once I made the connection. And then, on that same tour, seeing like at these fairs, they have like the whole pig roasts where like the apples in the mouth thing. And I just started making all these connections where I was like, oh my God, like the way that this has been packaged for me is so, so disparate from what it actually is. And it's nothing that I wanted to be associated with. I think really like by the time I was old enough to have an opinion about this stuff, I had an opinion, and the opinion was that like we shouldn't be killing animals for food.
How did your dad take it when you were 12 and made that initial choice?
I think my whole family was kind of like, well, we'll see how long this lasts. And the joke's on them because that was like, 17 years ago. So, yeah, I think that it was kind of like, okay, little girl, whatever you say. And I was serious about it. I was like, I will live off of bagels with nothing on them and peanut butter jelly sandwiches. Like, I didn't have any vegetarians in my life. Certainly I didn't have any vegans in my life. And then when I was 15, I was at like a hardcore festival, and I went over to like the tabling area, and PETA was there, and I was so proud of myself. I had this like the Smiths was like one of my favorite bands in high school, and I had this like Meat is Murder wristband, and I remember like I was wearing it, and I went over and I was like, "What's up? I'm vegetarian." I got this Meat is Murder bracelet, and they were like, "Cool. Have you ever thought about being vegan?" And I was like, "Oh." I totally got like punked by them. I was like, oh man. I was like, I'm not as cool as I thought I was, but I didn't even know what veganism was. Like, I wasn't exposed to it. So I remember reading this pamphlet that they gave me, and then I was like, all right, I guess I'm vegan now. And that was it. I just didn't know. So that's like a really interesting thing, because I was total PETA girl, like in high school. Like, they were the reason that I got into a lot of this stuff. Was through PETA. I think a lot of young people do or did. And then it's so interesting because now, I work on cat issues. And I think that while PETA, clearly has done great work bringing kids into like veganism, I think that like their stance on cats is very, very different than mine. So it's interesting because it's kind of heartbreaking as an adult to be like so disillusioned with the messages that they have that are like in opposition to a lot of the work I'm doing.
I was just going to ask you, like, PETA kind of brought you to veganism, and now you're kind of challenging PETA in a lot of ways. So how does that actually feel to almost flip the coin a little bit?
It's interesting. I have friends that work there, and I love talking to them about it. I think that their stance on cats is just so archaic and outdated. And I doubt that they mean it to be that way, but I think that, they're an organization that probably shouldn't be putting themselves out there with a hard stance on cats if they're not really doing the work, because they're sending a really, really inaccurate message about what's going on in the United States with cats. So I find myself like on opposing sides of legislation with them sometimes, where I'm like, I can't believe that I'm here and PETA's here and we're speaking against each other. Like, this is crazy. I would love to sit down with them, honestly. Like, I would love if they would invite me to go to their office and like give one of my talks for their staff and just have a conversation about it, because I think there's a lot for them to discover. And like, I'm coming from just a place of absolute sincerity with like the work that I do, that I like truly believe and know that the work I'm doing is saving lives. And like, they have this very hopeless perspective on cats where it's like, let's just euthanize them. And I'm like, oh my God, like, this is so not, it's so not necessary. Like I said, all that needs to exist is programs. And it's not a matter of like, it's not like I'm guessing that programs would save lives. I know programs save lives, and I know how they save lives. And I train shelters all the time in how to create those programs. So, to say it's better to euthanize a cat than it is to create a life-saving program for them, I just don't understand, But it'll be interesting to see how that all develops. I don't even think, a lot of their perspectives I find troubling with cats are about feral cats. Like, they believe that outdoor feral cats should all be euthanized, and I don't. Outdoor cats, that's the original way of being a cat. We've been living alongside cats outside for 10,000 years. And that's not a number I'm making up. That's actual. Like, since the Fertile Crescent, we've been living in symbiosis with outdoor cats. And it's only since the 60s that we've popularized the idea of indoor cats. So like, we have not given cats time to catch up with our expectation of them on this like timeline of domestication. And I think that that's where PETA gets it wrong, is they have this very like, if cats are not inside, then it's heartbreaking and it's so sad. And you should feel so sad that they're homeless. And I'm like, well, squirrels aren't homeless. we're not so sad that squirrels are outside. And cats, like, they're not as far along on this timeline of domestication as people might think. We really, like, kitty litter wasn't even invented until 1948. And it wasn't, like, sold in stores until the early 60s. So, like, people were not bringing cats inside and keeping them there until very, very recently, like a few generations. So I always tell people, like, being an outdoor cat, that's like the OG thing. That's like how cats used to do. And that's how about 50% of cats in the United States still do. There's a lot of cats outside. So, to say that, like, now, just because we have this idea that they should all be owned by people and indoors, that if they haven't, caught up with us yet, that they should be euthanized, I think is garbage. There's better solutions for that. Cats can live great lives outdoors. They just, in my opinion, should not be contributing to more intake and euthanasia at shelters, which is why I am a big fan of spaying and neutering those cats.
So when you're talking about outdoor cats, are you talking specifically about community cats or people allowing their cats outside that are normally indoor cats?
I mean, the thing is, there's so many ways of being a cat. Like, there's not always like a hard line with it. Like, some cats, I call them like ambiguously owned cats, where it's like, well, it's kind of my cat. I like give them some food sometimes, but so really, like, when I'm talking about outdoor cats, I really just mean like cats outside. PETA definitely thinks that cats, like, should never be outside. And, like, I'm not saying that cats should be outside. I have 2 indoor cats, and they don't go outside. They would get eaten alive outside because they're very spoiled indoors. But what I'm saying is that, like, when cats grow up outside and they don't see humans and they've never been around people, they're not going to be socialized to people. They're not going to be adoptable if they enter a shelter. And if they're not adoptable, then there's only one thing that happens to them, and that's that they're killed. So I believe that those cats should be spayed and, allowed to live their lives out without contributing to the population. It's just a different mindset. But I really think that they must just have never worked with outdoor cats, because they paint this picture that it's like, oh my God, like, cats, if they're outside, like, they could get hit by a bus. And I'm like, you could get hit by a bus. Anyone could get hit by a bus. But I'm not going to put a bullet in my head today because I might get hit by a bus tomorrow. Like, that's not how it works. Like, there's inherent risks to being outside as any species. But by and large, they do very, very well outside. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many of them. And the cats that I work with, I run trap, neuter, return clinics. I do a lot of trapping cats for spay neuter. They are largely very healthy animals. They really are, which is why I think anyone who does this work just finds it very silly to suggest that these cats are like facing some tragic thing outside, because they're absolutely not. We just got to get them spayed so that their kittens are not ending up dead in shelters.
Earlier you mentioned like doing other advocacy work for animal rights. So what really brought you from being vegan to then being an activist? Like, what was your first like foray into activism?
I think pretty immediately after I decided that I was not going to be eating animals, I decided that I also didn't want anybody else to be eating animals. So I think like the first causes that I really cared about were mostly based on like farm animal advocacy. So I was a snot-nosed little brat about it, and I would get like pamphlets and walk into a restaurant and just throw them. Like, I would just like walk in and be like, "Screw you guys! Stop eating your fish sandwiches! Like, take some of these pamphlets." I mean, I really was like, I was a jerk. You know what else I did? I would like petition my mother about it when I was like 15. I used to write her letters from all the dead animals in her fridge and like leave them on top of the roast and be like, "Hi, my name was so-and-so and you killed me and now you're not even going to eat me. Thanks." Like I was a aggressive little child. And I still, like I said, I still have that like in me, but it's just not, I think, the most effective tactic. I got into farm animal advocacy, and then I grew up in New York, so I went to the Big Apple Circus every year as a kid. And like I said, like I loved animals as a kid, but I didn't have a lot of opportunities to be around them. So the circus was one of my favorite things every year because you get to see these animals there. I also would go to like the Bronx Zoo, and then as I discovered things about animals in captivity, that became like another big issue for me. So like when I was in college, I went to school really like on the young side. I went to school from 17 to 20. So that whole time that I was in college, I was at a school that would host Ringling every year. And that became a huge, huge campaign for me, was like these like anti-Ringling work, trying to get my college to, stop bringing these tigers and elephants onto the campus and, abusing them in all of the ways that they do. And then as I started to meet people and go to the conferences and stuff, I learned so much more about like vivisection and fur and like all of it. And I mean, there's not many campaign areas that I haven't been involved with at one point or another, especially like when I was much younger. Now I am pretty focused on what I'm focused on. I think that like that's really good for me because I've become an expert at a very specific thing. But I absolutely still value and like will participate in and support all of those causes.
Is there anything that you see happening inside the animal rights movement that you wish wasn't? And on the flip side, is there anything that you wish was happening that just isn't?
I wish that there was more of an intersectional focus in the work that we do. I think that like there are a lot of people who care greatly about animal issues who don't care about any other social issues. And I think that that's a problem because, again, you have to be able to work with people, with humans to be able to accomplish things. And if you're, an animal advocate, but you're totally transphobic, like you're not going to be a person that can work in collaboration with other humans because you have to be able to work with other people. Like I actually witnessed this recently on social media where there was like this vegan activist guy that I knew, like I didn't know him very well, but this guy that I knew who was posting all this crazy stuff about like the North Carolina, like the HB2 bathroom thing, like was posting all this stuff about like how like, what was he saying? Like women fought too hard for their rights and now like men are going to take them away, basically. Like talking about like this whole issue, like just absolutely like crazy transphobic stuff that I'm like, wait, what? How are you like a vegan guy and you are so hateful about people? That is nuts to me. And he was defending himself and I was happy to click the unfriend button on that one. But, I wish that there was more of like an intersectional social justice standpoint on animal issues, just like I wish that in social justice movements that there was more of an incorporation of looking at like speciesism as a serious issue. The reverse of that is that I wish that people who cared about animals also cared about things like feminism and also cared about like dismantling racism within ourselves and our movement.
Besides this project, don't you also do another project, Rock to the Rescue, with your dad?
Yeah. It's not like my core focus anymore because I'm one person with like limited hours in the day. But yeah, I'm really proud of a lot of the work that we've been able to do. Basically, like we kind of developed this foundation all around just sort of transforming the communities I guess we should say for people who are listening, like my dad is in the band Styx, and they perform like 150 shows a year, typically, like a lot of shows. People don't realize that, but they perform all over the United States all year. And so it kind of was inspired out of this desire to do more than just perform in those cities, but to actually leave something behind. And because I do so much charitable work, not only around animals, but also other issues, I do a lot of work with like feminist issues and with kids and especially young girls and music and, access to food and stuff like that. So we created this organization Rock to the Rescue that basically goes with the band through every city and raises money for those various causes at the local level. So every city they perform in, we leave a nice, substantial gift behind to an organization that's doing, good social justice work in that community. And it's really cool. It's just like so amazing what you can do with just a little bit of leverage like that. What we've been able to accomplish is huge.
You were just talking about like you wish there was more intersectionality within the animal rights movement, and I've been a part of conversations with some pretty well-known people inside the movement where they openly acknowledge that they're singularly focused, and I can't wrap my mind around that. And so like you also mentioned how you wish like all the other social justice movements would incorporate veganism as well, and animal rights as well. But I guess my question is more of a statement of just like, how can we expect them to see the correlation if we can't see the correlation, if we can't get our own people to see the correlation? So, I mean, how can we really focus more on intersectionality and get people to not just say, yeah, I'm a feminist, but actually be that ally and go to the rallies and fight for the justice, and, show up to Black Lives Matters rallies and show up, to fight against, transphobia. How can we do a better job of motivating our base into those arenas?
Yeah. I mean, I think we can start to show up, I mean, like, I think there's a real stigma that's based in reality about like single issue activists. Mm-hmm. And I think that like the only way you change that is by changing it. Like the only way you change that is by starting to show up, just like let yourself be seen at other things. I think that it all boils down to the same issue, which is that we look down upon or we commodify anything that is other to ourselves or other to the norm, right? So like if I am like, I mean, with any issue, with human issues, anything that we don't understand, an experience that we don't have, rather than, being interested in learning about other people's experiences and interested in hearing like what are the issues that other people are suffering that might not have, like I'm a white woman. So I'm a woman and I face certain oppressions as like a woman, but I'm a white woman and I have a ton of privilege. And I know that there are lots of injustices that I'm never going to face because of my skin. And so I think like the best thing that I can do is know that. Like the best thing I can do is know that and then be interested in listening. So I think that like listening is a huge thing. I think that it all boils down to the same, like I said, the same thing where it's just like, even, with animal issues, like animals have such a different experience than we do that we just don't like even value them as, like in many ways, we value them literally as commodities, like they're, a thing that you buy or a thing that you kill and then buy, rather than as like an actual living creature whose experience we can learn about and understand. So I think like the more that we can just grow our own capacity to know that like, you only have the experience of the body that you're in, but that there's tons of other bodies that look different than yours, that are a different race than you, that are a different, gender identity than you, that are a different species than you. And like, you're not going to understand where they're coming from, but you can listen and you can try. And if they need something, you can be there for them. I mean, I think it's pretty, I think pretty simple and basic. And I don't see how you can care about one social justice issue and not recognize how it's all coming from the same root of just like, hate around the other. That's really, I think, what it boils down to. I wish people would at least be more willing to listen and be open and ask like, okay, how can I be participating and what can I be doing?
Lately, I've been criticized as being a social justice warrior. I'm not really sure.
Oh yeah, like the internet's really big on that, right?
Yeah, about caring too much about social justice issues. I don't really understand the problem.
Wait, that's a criticism?
I guess so. I'm not sure.
You know what, though? You know that, like, Taylor Swift song about haters gonna hate? Like, that's how I feel about that. Like, you gotta have love for your haters because that's how you know that you're someone, right? like, like, seriously, that's so ridiculous. Like, I get people who hate on me because I have such a huge audience, and people will hate on stuff I'm doing, and I'm like, oh, thank God you're here. That means that I have a huge audience if you're able to be here and be a grump about one thing you saw that you didn't understand, you know. I don't know. That is so bizarre. I don't know. I don't even know what to say to that. That like blows my mind. I think that that's a compliment.
do you find yourself getting just like weird criticisms like that? You're just like, what the fuck?
Oh yeah. Actually, the other day, so I try not to read them because like, not to be like, I don't have time for the haters, but like really, I truly don't. Like I really don't. I actually don't have time. I don't even have time for my own friends. So I certainly don't have time to sit there and like try to understand what like a 7th grader that commented on my thing is trying to say to me. But the other day I had like a few minutes where I had posted this video of these kittens that are in this carrier with like it's got this window on it basically. So it's a pet carrier, but it has a window so that you can see in. And something about people being able to see into this bag made everyone think that they can't breathe. Like, I don't think people understand. Like, I carry kittens around in bags all the time that don't have a glass window. This one's just like a funny, anyway, it's a thing that you could see. So I posted this video and it got over 2,000 comments. And I would say 70% of them were people saying, like, you're an animal abuser, you're suffocating kittens, like, someone should put your body in a bag, like, all this crazy stuff. And I didn't read it because I was like, all right, like, don't have time for that. But I sat on the couch the other day with, like, one of my volunteers and with my boyfriend, and we read a few of them, and we were dying laughing. People were writing, like, hashtag loser, hashtag witch, like, all these, like, I'm coming to your house and I'm going to kick your ass right now because you're abusing kittens. And I'm like, this is so funny. There's probably not another person in the world that does as much thinking on saving kittens' lives as I do. And, like, this person's going to beat me up for suffocating kittens. I'm like, okay. You know, so it's whatever. You have to laugh about it. People just don't get it. You have to laugh about it, and you just got to keep your eyes on the horizon because, like, I'm not, you know, half the time that I get, like, a hater comment, I click on the person, and it's like, hi, my name's Maya, and I'm 7. And I'm like, oh, right, okay, you're 7, and your name's Maya. Hi, Maya. Like, you don't understand anything yet about this because you're 7. So,
Princess crown emoji.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I mean, and that's why I'm out there. Like, I'm putting myself out there, and it's a vulnerable place to put yourself. But I think, like, I have a very unique message and perspective that I want people to see. And, you know, the more people follow me, the more they come to understand what I'm all about. So that's a very exciting thing. You know, as people follow me more and more, they understand, like, oh, this lady's not just like a cute kitten on the internet person, but she's actually like doing really transformative work all over the country. But she also makes rap videos about kittens, but she also trains animal control officers, you know, like I'm a multifaceted person, just like anybody. So, you know, all I can do is like share what I'm doing and share my story and hope that people get it. And I don't need people to get it because the thing is, like, I know that what I'm doing is changing, like really changing the game for kittens and for cats. And that's, you know, I don't work for people. I work for cats. Like that's what I'm doing is saving cats. So I would love if people understood every single thing that I'm doing, but they don't have to understand. They just have to understand that I am doing it. And if people, you know, if there are 7th graders that don't get it, then that's okay. They'll get it someday.
One of the things I have written down here as a takeaway is don't drop off kittens. So, because to me, that was like one of those things that's a new idea to me of not taking a kitten into a shelter for some reason. I don't know why it just never clicked in my head, you know, but it made a lot of sense when you said it. So what can you do, or what should you do in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like anything else. Like people want someone else to solve their problems all the time. You know, it's like you find a kitten and you go like, who's gonna take this kitten? And like the answer is you're gonna take that kitten and you're gonna save them. Like really. And that's not like that's not like some cute postcard I made up. That's like a real directive that I'm saying like, no, you will take that kitten home and you will raise them and you will find them a home. And it is not a difficult thing to do. And it is a very rewarding thing to do. And if you find yourself in a position that you find a kitten outdoors, I mean, the first thing I tell people is if you find a kitten outdoors, don't intentionally orphan them. If they have a mom, they should stay with the mom. So you can either leave them with the mom and then TNR the mom. So like make sure she gets spayed and take the kitten in once they're old enough, or you can take that whole family in, but you should never like take a kitten away from their mom because no kitten is better off with you than they are with their actual mother. But if you find a kitten that is orphaned, taking them to a shelter, probably not a good idea unless that shelter is known to have like a very strong program. There's a few places in the country that have nurseries for bottle babies that are really wonderful. Like I have a friend who volunteers for Kitten Lady, and she works at the San Diego Humane Society's kitten nursery. And so like if you're in San Diego and you take a bottle baby there, they're set up to help you. But in most communities, they're not. So in most communities, what I would say is like, if you find that kitten, like save them, you have to do it. You have to be the one to do it. Just like with anything, you gotta, like sometimes you have to, be the person that actually creates the change that you want. So yeah, I mean, and people can get involved by fostering for their local shelters. A lot of shelters have foster programs, and they always are lacking in people who are willing to raise orphans. So that's why a big part of my project, Kitten Lady, is not just social media stuff, but is like holding trainings at shelters so that all the people who follow me, because they like seeing the funny videos I post and stuff like that, they will come and watch my workshops, but they will leave signed up to foster for their shelter, So that's a big thing people can do, is not just like kind of passively stand by and if you find a kitten, then help them, but like go to your shelter and get actively involved in it. That's how this stuff is going to change, is by people being willing to do it. And so a lot of what I post is just like fun, but also like informative, like videos and stuff. I have a YouTube channel. It's just Kitten Lady, youtube.com/Kitten Lady. And I post like everything from how to bottle feed a kitten to how to get a kitten to go to the bathroom, how to socialize kittens if they're hissing. I do lots of instructional videos so that people, and a lot of people tell me every day, I get comments or messages from people saying, I picked up my first litter of kittens because of you. I didn't think I could do it, but because I see you every day doing it, I felt like empowered to do it. And people find the resources really helpful. I basically like am trying to become the resource that I wish I had when I was learning. So there's still not great resources out there, but that's why I'm developing this project, is so that there are really accessible and comprehensible resources for people who do want to save kittens' lives.
Well, how can people get in touch and find out some more about those resources?
Yeah, so I have, a ton of social media. Instagram is really where I like have my biggest stash of like stuff that I post and people who follow me. And that is just at Kitten X Lady. And then the same is my Facebook, facebook.com/Kitten X Lady. So those are two places that people can find me. You can also go on my website at kittenlady.org. I post all of my events on my website. So I do, come into communities and speak at shelters or at cat cafes. So people can actually take my trainings and my courses there. And then what else? My YouTube channel, like I said, youtube.com/kittenlady. So there's lots of ways to follow what I'm doing, and it's fun. I mean, I got to say, I have some really, really cute stuff that I put out there, but I also make it really real. So it's like, a huge portion of it is like funny cat videos. Like I said, I like did a rap with one of my kittens last night. And then like today I posted this video of like a biscuit making competition between two kittens. Do you know what it means? Like if cats make biscuits?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they were like these two kittens I have were both doing it at the same time. So I posted like this biscuit like bake off between the two kittens. So like it's just funny stuff like that. But then I also will post like very heady stuff about like how shelters can transform their protocols to save lives. And I do it, you know, I craft what I am putting out there very, very strategically so that it's just cute enough that people want to follow it, but educational enough that it actually results in people becoming inspired to make change in their community. So it's interesting. I would love to have as many people who want to come follow what I'm doing, follow it. And, you know, people say all the time, I wish I lived in DC so that I could help you. And I say, like, this is an issue everywhere in the world. So no matter where you are, you can help kittens. You just need to get involved at your, you know, at the local level. So people will even message me and say, like, how do I find out where to go? And I'm like, Google is your friend. Google it. Like, Google the city you live in and animal shelter, and then just call them and say, like, you know, I'm interested in helping kittens. Can I become a foster? And that's a great way to start. And then, you know, use the resources that I've put out there to learn and go from there.
Well, we end every episode saying fuck, shit, damn. Would you mind saying it for us this week?
Oh, yeah, please. What is it? Fuck, shit, damn.
Yeah.
Can I say it again?
Sure.
All right, let me say it more passionately. All right. Fuck, shit, damn.
This week you heard
The Outer Banks by the album Leaf.
Right now you're listening to
Bad Vibes by Trans Am. That's a weird band name, The Album Leaf. Makes you think of you're talking about the album and not the band.
iTunes. Every week we're going to ask you to go rate and review us. So please go do that. And if you've already done it, we just got onto the Google Play Store. Go subscribe to us there. There's no rating thing there that I know of. It's still kind of new for podcasts, but you can always go subscribe, and that will help our Google algorithm. So go to Google Play, subscribe. If you use iTunes, rate and review us. Also subscribe, and help out the show. And but again, the most important thing you can do if you want to help out the show is get a friend to listen.
If you don't use Google or iTunes because you're cool, then you can still subscribe. Just click on our RSS and use your favorite RSS aggregator.
Yep. We try to make it easy.
We do. And we're on Stitcher, too. I mean, we do a lot
I forgot we were on Stitcher.
Yeah, we do a lot of things. Find us on veganfeed.com.
Yeah, Vegan Feed. It's a great resource to find other vegan podcasts as well. Veganfeed.com. And also, we do social stuff, right?
Yeah, because we're really lonely, and we don't have friends in real life, so we rely on the online community around the podcast to satisfy our social needs. So
It's very true.
So just, find us on social media. Tell us that we look cool or that the food that we posted, it looks delicious. Wait, no. That's just me on social. Oh, you can follow the podcast too. It's at Which Side Pod on Twitter. Go to whichsidepodcast.com and click on the social tab and find all of our social medias.
I don't know how I'm going to edit that.
However you want.
Is it that time, or do we have more to say?
Yeah, it's that time. That's that time that we say that thing that person just got tattooed on them. Thanks, Becky Mullins.
It's a fucking sweet tattoo, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm jealous of it.
Yeah, now I want one.
I know, me too. Thanks a lot. Now I'm going to have to get more tattoos.
Yeah. Fuck shit, damn.
Fuck shit, damn.
Which Side Podcast is hosted and produced by Jordan Halliday and Jeremy Parkin of the Which Side Media Collective, with web design by Jordan Halliday and sound design by Jeremy Parkin. Booking by Mari Halliday. Theme music by Commandantes. Go to whichsidecollective.org to check out the other shows in the collective. As always, fuck shit damn.